Okay, welcome back to City Valley Fishing Field Team, COAF Field Team. That's our YouTube channel, and I'm Glenn. In this round, we're going to talk about a little bit more about fishing licenses that you need to have in preparation for fishing up in Oklahoma, specifically since we posted that infographic on Blue River Fishing, Oklahoma, fishing places. Had some follow-up questions as to what do you need from a fishing license standpoint. So we'll tackle this kind of two ways. One, we'll give an infographic showing what the requirements are from a resident standpoint, and then also what the requirements are from a non-resident standpoint, since a lot of our folks over here that follow us are in Texas. We'll start out, one, we'll take a look at the regulations. It's a PDF document that you can get free online at Oklahoma's Department of Wildlife Conservation. Additionally, you can also pick it up at various places where you buy your licenses as well. They're free. There's a hard copy edition of it that is available. So let's go and take a look at that, and then we'll also post that infographic as well. Okay, here's the cover of the Oklahoma Fishing 2019-2020 Fishing Regulations. As you can see up in the upper corner, it says free. It is free. You can get the hard copy edition at your local fishing places. I know over here in our area you can pick it up a hard copy form over there at what was formerly Dave's Ski and Tackle. I think it's now I forgot, the Lone Star Convenience Store, so you can pick up that as well. But you can also just download it off their internet page or web page. We'll post a link to that as well. It's a PDF version. It's pretty straightforward to read. Okay, so let's go take a look at the document itself. And when we say the document itself, we're talking about some key items to look at. So that was the cover page. We'll just scroll down to the contents page, and we'll focus in particular licenses, general fishing regulations, some frequently asked questions that we want to point out, and then some department fishing areas and some information that is available there. Additionally, some statewide daily and size limits, some key things that we want to point out, and then some trout regulations and area map information, as well as special regulations within these public fishing waters. So we'll just highlight some of the things that we saw in the document itself, and then also we'll post that infographic that gives you just a little bit more quicker summary as to what you need to do in preparation to fish in the blue. Also, we do caution that regulations will change, so you do want to make sure to take a look at this document as well as their online information, their webpage, just to confirm that you are legal. If in doubt, you can always reach out to them. There's some contact information that will post from their webpage where you can contact the department to get some clarification if you have those questions not answered in these documents. Okay, so let's go to page 2. So first thing in the upper portion, you'll see all purchase licenses and permits must be carried on your person. So you do have to have it on you yourself. But what's different that we've seen in the past is now they mentioned you can take electronic licenses on your phone. That is allowed. So good to know that if you do carry your phone out there, hopefully it's waterproof. You have that available as an option for showing proof that you have a license. Some of the key things that you want to take a look at. I know there's some special regulations, some special permits, exemptions, but we're just going to call out some of the key ones for someone who would be fishing who doesn't apply to those special regulations or exemptions. So from a resident standpoint, there's an annual fishing license that goes from January 1 to December 31. There's a fiscal year combination fishing and hunting license that goes from July 1 to June 30th, so the fiscal year. It does cost a little bit more. Actually, it costs more than your annual fishing license, but it is a combo license to keep in mind. And then for those that are youth annual fishing 16 and 17-year-old license, that goes from calendar year, January 1, December 31. And you can see the costs are listed here as well. From a senior citizen fishing standpoint, there's some note about in 2A that you want to be aware of. It's a lifetime license There's some details as to if you're 65 or turning 65 during that calendar year, you have to apply for that lifetime license. I think you can get the application online, various places, but you actually purchase it from the department headquarters itself. Additionally, if you, I think there's like 1923, there is an exemption there that if you were born around that time, if not before that, so older, you don't, you're actually exempted from the lifetime license itself. So do read here, make sure that you have that information, and do get a hold of it for those resident senior citizen that are qualify for that senior citizen fishing license. From a non-resident standpoint, the key thing that you want to keep in mind is the annual fishing license goes from calendar year, so January 1 to December 31. There's not a fiscal year one. There are also two options, a 6-day as well as 1-day fishing option. The 6-day going from 6 consecutive days that you choose, or the 1-day fishing one where it's 1 day of choice. So keep that in your back pocket if you want to plan on fishing up in Oklahoma, specifically in the Blue River, that you'll need to be licensed. Now, one thing that's a little bit different from an exemption standpoint, and we'll go into more detail there in the next page, or I think the next one that talks of some special exemptions. But if you are a senior citizen in Texas, 65 or older, you do have an exemption for not requiring a fishing license. So keep that in mind. We'll talk about here shortly. Also on page 2, you want to take a look at the residency definitions. So depending on those definitions and specific criteria, you may actually qualify to be a resident and not have to purchase a non-resident fishing license. Okay, so let's go on to the next page. It's going to be page 4. We'll just scroll down here. So under special licenses permits, we've highlighted several things. Fishing fiscal year licenses. Take a look at that. I mentioned that briefly. Also, lifetime senior citizen combination hunting and fishing licenses. And there's that piece where it talks about January 1, 1923, you're exempt, so you don't have to carry that senior citizen fishing license, but you have to have proof of age. And then also keep in mind that you have to apply for it. So keep that in your back pocket for you senior citizen Oklahoma residents. There's some additional exemptions that you want to take a look at from some special licenses or permits that you might qualify for. So do look into more detail there. But that said, let's go on to numbers, let's see, page 6. There's some good information there that we want to point out. License requirements gives more detail as to those license requirements that you'll need. License exemptions. So here's that exemption piece from a resident standpoint. Residents under 16 years old that we point out. Additionally, there's disabled veterans with 60% disability or more. Take a look at that one. That's a good one to find some information on. And then residents that have some, I think there's something about non-ambulatory disabilities and whatnot. I think there's something that's applied there. So do take a look at that if you're qualified for that as well. Now, the item that we have highlighted in pinkish reddish color, we're not too clear on what that means, so we just kind of marked it for now. Maybe some folks want to take a look at more as to what that particular bullet point indicates when it comes to license exemption. But it's dealing with county lines, your resident, bordering, whatnot, and how you fish. I'm not clear on what that really means, so we're just going to hold that for now and just keep in mind that you do have to have a fishing license when you're fishing the blue. From a non-resident standpoint, non-residents under 14 years old, you're good to go. And then in particular, non-residents under 16-year-olds, and there's a number of states here that you don't need a fishing license. And in particular is Texas. So our home state here qualifies. So if you're under 16 years old, then you're good to go to fish the Blue River without a fishing license. Non-residents 65 and older who are residents of Texas with valid ID required. So basically your driver's license gives you proof of your age is what you want to keep in your back pocket when you want to go fish Oklahoma waters. All right, and then here's a breakout between residents and non-residents. You do want to take a look at that, some particular information there. So that said, keep page 6 in mind when you're looking up these information. Okay, let's shift over to page 10. The big thing you want to take away from page 10 is the trout regulations, and there's a trout block here that we've highlighted, and it says there's some more details on pages 16 and 19 that you want to make sure you take a look at. Where it has this little footnote A, what they're specifically talking about is culling, and it's called out several times throughout the regulations that once you put that fish on your stringer, at that point, or it says stringer, live well, or otherwise held in possession, you're permitted from statewide culling. So you can't cull, so you can't just put it on the line, release it. If you've caught another one, you need to let it go, or you need to keep it on your line. It accounts to your limit. All right, so let's go on and shift to, okay, so you want to keep this in mind, statewide daily limits, as well as some specific regulations, and there's some details as to how to make a difference, or tell the difference between a rainbow trout and a brown trout. Okay, now let's go and shift over to page 16. Okay, here's some general trout regulations. Here's where you want to really pay attention to. Okay, again, talking license requirements between resident and non-resident. Keep that in mind, what they're saying there. Also, there's always this talk of a stamp, a trout stamp. You have to have it or not. So it's no longer required. Way back when, you had to purchase it separately. We had the same thing happen in Texas where you purchase it separately. Well, now it's included with your purchase of your fishing license. And so if someone mentions you have to have it, or mentions a trout stamp, it's not required. It's included with your fishing license. Okay, so looking at method of take, what you want to take away from here is, again, the no culling. Right here in one of the first bullets under the method of take. Additionally, where you put it on a stringer, it has to be marked with the angler's name and customer ID number, or lifetime license number. So when we talk about the customer ID number, when you get your fishing license, there'll be a customer ID on there, sort of like your license number. Make sure you put that on the tag, as well as your name, and make sure you have identification so you can show that that is you, and make sure that you only put your fish on your stringer, else you could be cited and fined. In the case of when you don't have a fishing license, like in the case of a 65-year-old or older Texas resident fishing in Oklahoma, for trout, you want to make sure you tag your stringer as well, referencing your proof of ID. So in this case, if you have a driver's license, your proof of ID that you are a Texas resident, 65 or greater, make sure you include that on your marker to show that that is your stringer. And then here's some more information about daily size and limits. There's a statewide daily size limit. There's also some specifics for a given location, to include the Blue River in this case. So we'll talk about the Blue River piece here shortly, when to get that in the next pages. Also look at possession limit, as well as artificial flies and lures defined. Keep that in your back pocket as well when you're out there, in some special regulations there, like the catch and release area in the blue. There'll be some requirements there that you should keep in mind. Also, we've highlighted that there's a trout stocking and fishing report that you can, in the document itself, you can double click on it. It'll take you to the website, and it'll give you some information there. So keep that in mind. Okay, so let's take a look at page 17. Some specific regulations here at the Blue River. There's a trout stocking season. What does that mean? November 1 through March 31 is when they're stocking. So you can fish for the opportunity, for a chance at some of those trout out there. There's some general information here that you want to keep in mind. In particular, looking at special regulations for the Blue River. Okay, there's no size limit, but there is a catch and release area that goes from November 1 to February 28, where you have to release the trout you catch. And we've got more details into that infographic that we put out together in that video we posted just the other day. So keep that in mind when you're fishing the catch and release only area from November 1 to February 28. You can only catch and release. After that, March 1, it doesn't apply. You can catch and keep. Also, when you're fishing the catch and release area, it's barbless hooks, artificial flies, and lures only, so no bait. And when it comes to barbless hooks, what you want to keep in mind as a rule of thumb that we found out in confirming is it barbless or not, if you take your hook after you've mashed down the barb and you pass it through a piece of cloth, be it your shirt sleeve, and it doesn't hang up or just comes in and out of the cloth without, I guess, dragging, that's a good rule of thumb to note that it is a barbless hook. So keep that in your back pocket when you're out there fishing these catch and release areas. Okay, page 28. This is one that we like because it specifically calls out some of the frequently asked questions that folks have asked us, as well as that we've seen in various pages and forums where people are asking about what if this or what if that. So in this case, frequently asked questions specifically, here's one that really applies to those in Texas. I'm 72 years old and live in Texas. Do I need to buy a fishing license if I'm visiting Oklahoma to fish? And lo and behold, there it is. No. If you are a Texas resident who is 65 or older, you can take advantage of the reciprocal agreement between Oklahoma and Texas. This agreement allows anyone 65 and older to fish in the other state without having to buy a license. So keep that in mind. But again, when you're marking your stringer, make sure you do have proof of age, proof of ID, and make sure you mark that on your tag that you're going to mark on your stringer to show that that is yours. The other piece is, can I catch trout when it's not trout season? And the answer is yes. Trout season is the period during which trout are stocked and certain other restrictions apply. Now, so you may catch and keep trout year-round. So the key takeaway here is there's a trout stocking season. It's, there's not a limited time that you can not catch trout. But there are those special regulations, as we pointed out in the Blue River. There's some special regulations there. Lower Illinois, Lower Mountain Fork, Beavers Bend. Those areas all have some special regulations. And lo and behold, they're in this document. So keep that in your back pocket. Review it before you go. If you have any questions, do reach out to the Oklahoma Department of Fish or Wildlife Conservation. Okay, let's go on to page 29. And what we note about page 29, these are department fishing areas, some public use restrictions. And in particular, you want to look at the lower part over here on page 29 where it calls out public river, Blue River public fishing and hunting area. And there's some specific things you want to take a look at from hours, from a hunting standpoint if you decide to do some hunting, camping restrictions, and some information there, as well as a wildlife management unit. Some special rules apply there. So make sure to read that information if you're making a trip to the Blue. It's good to have that information available in case you do have any concerns or questions while you're there. Okay, let's go to page 30. This will be the last one we look at for this round. And this is Public Fishing Waters Special Area Regulations, and calling out specifically the Blue River Public Fishing and Hunting Area. Right here, there's some contact information, daily size limits with other fish, and then in particular when it comes to methods, fishing is limited to only 1 rod and reel per person during the trout season. So you want to keep that in mind when you're fishing for trout during the trout stocking season. You want to make sure that you have that 1 rod and reel only. There's some additional regulations that apply, and they're pointing you back to page 16 that we had gone over previously, so do take a look at that as well, just to refresh again, because there's a lot of information contained in this document. Alrighty, so that said, let's talk about the infographic. Okay, so the infographic that we posted is talking more of the licenses that you'll be needing. Don't go into specific exemptions and whatnot, but just some key things for, I believe, most of our viewers may be interested in. And if those that need to delve in a little bit more, there's some links to get to the e-regulations or this document that we just went over. So for some key things, as a resident, you do need to have a fishing license. There are some things to keep in mind. If based on your age, you may not have to pay as much, or you may be able to get away with not having to pay at all. And then from a non-resident standpoint, depending on the state, in particular Texas, there are also some differences where based on your age, as well as some yeah, based on your age, that you may not have to pay as much or not pay at all when it comes to fishing Oklahoma, specifically the Blue River. All right, all for now. Till next time, we'll catch y'all later, and good luck and good fishing.